corresponding, sorry, corresponding to her ketubah. Rabbi Yossi says he may go on decreasing continually, perhaps an inheritance will fall to her from someone else, somewhere else, and he will collect therefrom. Likewise, if one rebels against his wife, they increase her ketubah for 3 dinners a week. Rabbi Yehuda says 3 triopeks. If one supports his, If one supports his wife through a third party, he may not give her less than 2 kavim of wheat or 4 kavim of barley. Said Rabbi Yossi, no one provided her with barley except Rabbi Yishmael, who was near Edom. He must give her half a kav of beans, half a log of oil, and a kav of dried figs or a manna of pressed figs. If he has none, he must provide her in their stead with produce of another kind. He must give her a silver no, that's wrong. He must give her a bed, a mattress, a mat, and he must give her a veil for her head, a girdle for her loins, and shoes from festival to festival, and clothes worth 50 zuz from year to year. She may not be given new ones in the summer or worn ones in the winter, but must be given clothing worth 50 zuz in the winter, and she clothes herself with them when they are worn out in the summer, and the worn out clothing is hers. He must give her a silver ma for her needs, and she eats with him on the night of every Sabbath. If he does not give her a silver ma for her needs, her handiwork is hers. What must she do for him? The weight of 5 selim of warp in Judah, which equals 10 selim in Galil, or the weight of 10 selim of woof in Judea, which equals 20 selim in Galil. If she was nursing, they decrease her handiwork requirement and add to her food. When does this apply? In the case of the poorest in Israel, but in the case of the wealthy, everything is according to his wealth.
Okay, cool. Very clear. So when a woman finds something or earns something, then it comes to her husband. Okay, this is in return for her mazonas that he's feeding her in previous Mishnah. So now what happens if she inherits something from her side of the family? That doesn't automatically belong to him, but he has the right of Paris, right? So let's say she inherited a field, he ochel Paris b'chayeha. While she's alive, then he just gets the Paris. So if the marriage dissolves, then it comes back to her. But if it's if she dies, then he inherits her Yerusha. Boshtel Fagama. Now, what happens if a woman is if somebody assaults his wife or whatever? So there's the damage, and there are 5 different types of damages that a woman can that a person can get. Right? There's boshes and pagam that I mentioned here. There's tsar, the pain. There's shevis and ripoy. So shevis is the amount of time that they can't work, and ripoy is the healing. So now this Mishnah only deals with boshes and pagam. Why? Because the other 3 are actually no-brainers. Tsar is something that only happens to the woman. So there's the husband has no share in that. Okay. The shevis, however, the amount of time that she can't work on the stuff, that's going to belong to the husband, because anything that she produces belongs to him. And what's the other? Ripoy. And ripoy is also any medical expenses. Again, that's on the husband, because the husband has to pay for her medical expenses. So if they can claim them in court, then it must automatically go to the husband. The ones that are in question over here are boshes and pagam, because boshes is the embarrassment, because that's kind of a shared thing. If somebody hurts a man's wife, it doesn't just hurt her; it also hurts him to some extent.
Right.
And pagam is how much she is permanently damaged now, because there's also an aspect of it's his wife who's been damaged. Okay, so the Mishnah, the Tanna Kama of our Mishnah says that her boshes and pagam are hers. It's entirely her thing. She was the one who was embarrassed. She's the one who's been damaged. So therefore, the damages come to her. He disagrees. He says the husband has also got a chelik in this. If the incident happened in private and struck her in a private place that doesn't show up, okay, shnei chalakim below echad. She gets lach shnei chalakim, so she gets 2/3.
Right.
And why? Because because this is something that only she feels and only she gets because it's in private, but her husband still has a small chalik. However, if it happened in public or if it happens in to an exposed part of her body, and he's got to walk around with the wife who's got the massive bruise and whatever out there. He says, "Lo shnei chalakim v'lo echad." So he gets two, and she gets one, 2/3 and one. She gets 1/3. Now, when there's this, in all of the damages, any damages that are due to the husband must be paid to the husband directly, immediately, like any other court judgment. But and now that she has earned money from a court judgment, so she must use that money to buy land, and so the husband can enjoy the payros of the land. Okay, and that's the general thing with any money that falls to the wife during in any metaltalin, even that she gets, that's entirely her entitlement, should be converted into fixed property, and then the husband is entitled to the payros. The usufruct. Okay. Base. Haposek maos the chasana. So now, when a father-in-law gives a nice nadunya to his son-in-law, okay, umeis chasanon. So he's already stipulated it in the Kesubos that he's going to give 10,000 whatever to his son-in-law, and his son-in-law dies before reaching the chuppah. Now his wife, now the wife, the daughter, is the Yavama. So the husband's brother steps in and says, "Okay, I'll come and marry her. And I'm happy to take the money that you're putting in the Kesubos too." Amru chachamim yachol hu shegomar. So the father-in-law can say, "Lachicha hayisin rotziritain." I was happy to give to your brother. You know, he's the one that I asked that I wanted my daughter to marry. You are not your brother. If she I don't want to give you a nadunya like that. This is because it was your brother, which the Chacham say is fair enough. And they say even if according to society's measurements, the yavam is actually of a higher standing than his deceased brother. Like if he's a greater Talmid Chacham or whatever. Nonetheless, the father is entitled to say that. Okay. Just by the way, I was actually thinking about this, that the nadunya that the father of the bride gives is also kind of a golden handcuffs. Because if the husband divorces her now, he's going to have to pay that back. So it's a nice golden handcuffs to make sure that he looks after his wife nicely.
He has, even if he uses all the money up, he still has to pay it back. He has to find some way to pay it back.
You have to find
he can never divorce her based on that then.
Yeah, exactly.
But if she commits adultery or something like that, then he could divorce her and not have to give it back.
Then she loses her Kesubos.
Right. But he wouldn't have to give it back then in that case.
If she loses her Kesubos, she loses her Kesubos.
That's it. Okay. Right.
Yeah. So Pascal,
the Kesubos was for the Kesubos is for her. Well, it's for him. He's giving it to her. I thought it was for her. So how is that money going
to her? It is for her, but any property that she brings into the marriage, if she predeceases him, then he gets to keep it. That's why. So that's in response. So connected that he has to bury her.
Right.
He has to pay for her burial. Okay. But anything that's in the Kesubos that she brought in, there's the basic 200 zuz that any woman gets plus the nadunya, and he's going to have to give those back.
Okay. All right.
Okay, Pascal hachnis lo 1,000 dinars. So if the nadunya is 1,000 dinars, who posek kenegdan 15 maneh. So the tradition here is to write into the Kesubos an extra 50% from the inside, or what they call it, a third from the outside, for some reason, the tradition, their custom was to measure extra percentages by by how much the extra amount is on the final amount. So
Just like
if you start
50%.
1,000, then it's 1,500. Then you put in 1,500, of which the extra 500 is a third.
Right.
Okay. Chamisha Samane. Now, what's the idea over here is that he's getting a cash value, then he's got the use of the cash immediately, and so he writes into the Kesuba a liability of 1,500, which is interesting because it seems like it's a kind of an interest, but it's not interest because there's no fixed term. He at the moment he never really has to pay it back. But whether he divorces her the next day or divorces her 25 years later, it's the same 1,500.
Okay.
Okay. Keneged hashum hu posek pakos chomesh. But if she brings in the metaltalin, anything that has to be assessed, so whatever she comes into marriage with a car, and they assess the value of the car and say, okay, this is what it's worth, then he has to put into the Kesuba a fifth less than what the assessment is, because people typically give the assessment at a fifth extra of what is in honor of the bride. So then the husband only has to put in the correct amount, which is a fifth less. However, the Mishnah points out, if it is actually an accurate assessment, and it was 100 zuz, and it really was worth 100 zuz, then he must put in the correct value. So it's, how do you tell if they're overestimating or not? Don't know. Shum b'maneh hi nosenes 31 sela v'dinar. So if there's an extra if the woman wants her husband to write in a Kesuba that she brought in an evaluation of 100, in other words, various objects that are worth up to 100 dinar, right? Then she must he nosenes 31 sela v'dinar, right? That's the extra fifth. Because 31 is 31 sela, 31 dinars. A dinar is a sela. A sela is 4 dinars. Okay, so 31 times 4 is 124, and another dinar is 125. So there's your extra 25 on top of the 100. Okay, so it's kind of repeating what we knew before, that it's an extra fifth. If she wants to have 100 written in the contract, then she has to give him things that are assessed at 125. And if it's 400, he knows that it's chamesh meos. Then she must give 500, not 400. Now, why do we have to give all these numbers? We can do math. I think the point of the Mishnah here is that it doesn't matter how big or small the amount. It's the same percentage.
Okay.
Masha chasen posek hu posek pachos chomesh, and whatever the chasen agrees to in terms of what's in the yes, right. So whatever he puts into the Kesuba, he can take it down by that fifth. So if she brought in 125, he can put in 100.
Okay.
So it's so many different ways of really saying the same thing. You wonder why the Mishnah had to be so verbose, and possibly this is what this extended footnote is at the bottom here.
Right.
Anyways, that's how many Mishnah is. How am I doing? Okay, let's do some chazaras.
Okay, guys, do you have time for Kesaris? You have time?
Let me say I've got until 10 past.
All right, here we go. Whatever is this is Gimel Zion. Whatever is the compensation for disgrace, all depends upon the status of one who disgraced and the one who was disgraced. As to impairment, we regard her as if she were a slave woman who was to be sold, How much was she worth, and how much is she worth? The fine is uniform with everyone, and every monetary obligation that has a fixed amount set by the Torah is uniform with everyone. Wherever there is a right of sale, there is no fine imposed, and wherever there is a fine imposed, there is no right of sale. A minor is subject to the right of sale, and she is not entitled to a fine, and a maiden is entitled to a fine, and the right of sale does not apply to her. A mature girl is neither subject to the right of sale, or nor she is entitled to a fine. If one declares, I have seduced so-and-so's daughter, he must pay for disgrace and impairment by his own admission, but he does not pay the fine. Likewise, if one declares, I have stolen and I have slaughtered, and I have sold, he must pay the principal by his own admission, but he need not pay the double payments or the twofold or fivefold payments. If one declares, my ox has killed so-and-so and so-and-so's ox, he must pay the due payments by his own admission. And if one declares, my ox has killed so-and-so's slave, however, he need not pay the fine by his own admission. And this is the general rule. Whoever must pay more than he has damaged and need not pay by his own admission. And Olive. If a maid was seduced, the indemnities for her disgrace and her impairment as
hold on, where are you?
on Dalet Aleph.
Dalet Aleph? No, that's it. We're going back to Yevamos now.
Okay, all right. And if the Kohen of Yisrael was betrothed to a Kohen, or pregnant by a Kohen, or waiting even by it to a Kohen, similarly the daughter of a Kohen to a Yisrael, she may not eat truma. The daughter of a Yisrael was betrothed to a Levi and pregnant by a Levi, or waiting even by a Levi, and similarly the daughter of a Levi to a Yisrael, she may not eat the tithe. If the daughter of a Levi was betrothed to a Kohen, or pregnant by a Kohen, or waiting even to a Kohen, and similarly the daughter of a Kohen to a Levi, she may not eat truma or the tithe. The daughter of Israel married a Kohen, and she may eat truma. If he died and she has a child by him, she may eat truma. If she then married a Levi, and she may eat the tithe. And if he died and she has a child by him, she may eat the tithe. If she then married a Yisrael, she may not eat truma or tithe. And if she died and he has a child by him, she may not eat truma or the tithe. If a child by the Yisrael died, she may eat the tithe. If a child by the Levi died, she may eat truma. If her child by the Kohen died, she may not eat truma or the tithe. Okay, that's three. Try another one. Okay.
Okay, Sukkah Dalad.
How is the mitzvah of lulav performed? If the first day of Sukkot falls on Sabbath, they bring the lulav to the Temple Mount, and the attendants receive the lulav from them and arrange them upon the bench. But the elderly place theirs in a chamber, and they teach them to say, my lulav is presented as a gift to whomever it may come. On the morrow, they arise early and come, and attendants throw the lulav before them, and they would snatch them, striking one another. When the Beis Din saw that they were endangered, they ordered that everyone should take his lulav at home. How was the mitzvah of the willow performed? There was a place below Jerusalem called Motzah. They descended there, gathered from their large willow branches, and came and stood up against the sides of the altar, with the tops drooping over the top of the altar. They blew on a trumpet, a tekiah, a teruah, a tekiah. Each day they would circle the altar at one time and say, please Hashem, bring salvation now. Please Hashem, bring salvation now. Rabbi Yehuda says they would say, Ani v'Yehovah, bring salvation now. But on the day they would circle the altar 7 times. When they left, what did they say? Beauty is yours, O altar. Beauty is yours, O altar. Reb Elliot says they said to Yah and to you, O altar, to Yah and to you, O altar. Yep.
One more.
Just as it was performed on the weekday, so it was performed on Shabbos, except that they gathered them on the eve of Shabbos and placed them in golden vessels that they should not wilt. Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka says they brought date palm branches and beat them on the ground at the sides of the altar. That day was called the day of the beating of the date palm branches. Okay. And it is liable to Masros and to Maisa Ani. And poor Israelites and poor priests may take, but the poor Israelites may sell theirs to the priest at the price of Truma, and the money is theirs. He who smites is praiseworthy, and he who threshes, how shall we do it? He must hang baskets around the necks of the animals and put them on the same of the same kind. Thus he neither muzzles the animal nor gives it to Truma to eat. The product of Truma is Truma, and the product is Chulin. For the product of table of Ma'aser Rishon, of spontaneous growth of the 7th year, of Truma from outside Eretz Israel, of Meduma, and first fruits is Chulin. The product of Hegdish or of Ma'aser Sheni is chulin, and he redeems them at the time that they were sown. 100 beds of truma and one of chulin, all are permitted if one of a kind of seed disintegrates. But if one of a kind of seed does not disintegrate, then even if there were 100 of chulin and one of truma, all are forbidden. Okay. What grows from tevel is permitted if it is a kind whose seed.
We're done for you there.
That was done. I thought so. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, let's finish this off.
Okay. Okay. If a pot was placed on a threshold in such a way that it was raised, it would extend over the outer handbreadth of the lintel, and there is tumah below, inside, or above the pot. The tumah penetrates upward and downward. If the pot is of one handbreadth above the ground, and there is tumah below it or inside the house, the area below the pot and the inside of the house becomes tummy, but whatever is inside or above the pot remains tahor. And if the tumah is inside or above the pot, everyone becomes tummy. If the pot was placed on the threshold so that it would raise, it would not touch an outer handbreadth of the lintel, or it is touching the side of the lintel, and there is tumah underneath the pot. Only what is below the pot becomes tummy. If the roof of a house is split and tumah is in the outer part, utensils that are in the inner part remain tahor. If tumah is in the upper part, Beis Shammai says the split must be 4 handbreadths wide for the outer part to remain tahor. Whereas Beis Hillel says it remains tahor even if the split is very small. And Rav Yossi says in the name of Beis Hillel, a handbreadth. If a portico is split and tumah is on one side, utensils on the other side remain tahor. And if a person places his foot on a reed on top of the split, or he combines it combines the tumah. If a person places a reed on the ground, he does not cause tumah to spread unless it is a handbreadth above the ground. And we have Avodah Zorah. Okay. Preceding the festivals, that is calamities of idolaters, for 3 days it is forbidden to transact business, literally take and give with them, to lend them articles or to borrow articles from them, and to lend them money, or to borrow money from them, or pay a debt to them, or accept repayment from them. Rabbi Yehuda says we may accept repayment from them since this causes him distress. They said to him, even though it causes him distress, he rejoices afterwards. The Ishmael says it's forbidden for 3 days preceding them and for 3 days following them, but the Chachamim say before the festivals is forbidden, but after the festivals is permitted. These are the idolater festivals: Kalinda and Sadar and Allah and Kratisis, and the coronation of the day of emperors and the birthday of this anniversary of his death. These are the words of Ramea. But the Chachamim say any death for which there is a burning, there is idolatry. But for which there is no burning, there is no idolatry. However, on the day of the shaving of his beard or lock of hair, or the day he returned from the sea, or the day that he was released from prison, or when an Aladah makes a banquet for his son, the prohibitions apply only on the day with regard to that man alone.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry it was so late today.
That's great.
Have a great Shabbos.
Have a good Shabbos.
Thank you. Bye.